What just happened?
What just happened?
What just happened?
What just happened?
That just happened. What just happened? I'm Dan. That's Julia. And that's Vex over there. Her channel is going to be linked below if you want to check her out. And before we get into it, just letting you guys know, once we hit 3,000 subscribers, we're giving away $50 on Venmo. Stay tuned to the end of the video. We have a big announcement when it comes to the channel. So let's just jump right into it. So it starts off with how last episode ended, and they're examining the bodies. There was more than 3. That's all I saw last week, but we find out the number later on in this episode. So she's examining the bodies. They have burnt eyeballs. They have exploded eardrums. And one of them seems to have scratched his own eyes out, says Peter. So that's interesting.
Sorry, can I just tell you how much I love that they call it a corpsicle?
I liked that as
It's
well.
so morbid, but it's so up my alley. I love it. Sorry, continue.
It's a good term. So while this is going on, Rose is talking to Navarro, and she's like, you might want to sit this one out.
Maybe leave this one for someone else, Missy.
And she can't because it's tied to Annie K's case. She swears it is anyway. We find out later that it in fact is in this episode.
It's tied to Annie's case, Rose.
Oh, then you're screwed.
And then one of the cops is digging around and accidentally breaks off one of the arms of one of the corpses.
Sorry. Still touch the skin. That's it. Wilson! What the fuck?
And then the weirdest part of the whole episode for me, one of the men starts screaming. So he survived.
Weirdly enough. So now this is the 4th day of darkness now in this episode, right? So first episodes, it opened on December 17th. Now it's December 21st. And then remember in the last episode, Danvers was like, these guys have been missing for at least 2 days, maybe 3 days, but they find them at the end of the 3rd day. So at this point, all those bodies have been out there for about 3 days. So realistically, that dude should not be alive whatsoever.
I feel like there are rare cases in which if it's like the right temperature, it can slow down your heart rate so much that you are technically dead, but you're not. You still have a heartbeat. So when your body like warms up again.
First of all, they don't show how they got that dude out of the ice because they're just like, oh, remember to cut 3 feet. And then it's like, how did you get the guy out of the ice? So there's that A. And they snap off his arm clean. That's how we learn that he's even alive in the first place. So I mean, maybe someone in the comments can let us know if it's possible, but I find it highly unlikely that a naked dude is surviving almost 3 days in frigid temperatures.
Yeah, and then we got, confirmation when she was talking to the nurse.
It's not looking good, ma'am. We'll have to amputate at least one leg.
How soon can we talk to him?
Definitely not today.
Trying to ask about his situation. They're like, oh, we're going to have to amputate his leg. I wonder if this person will ever be interviewed or be able to speak at all, or if they're just going to pass away. So we'll see what happens with that.
He's in an induced coma.
Thank you, nurse. Just hold on.
Danvers goes to see a man named Bryce. He's a school teacher.
I need you to explain to me what Solal Station does.
We'll come back to that in just a minute. Rose is talking to Navarro about Travis, and then we get the confirmation that Travis is, in fact, Rust's father in this episode.
He knew he was dying. He didn't want the leukemia to take him.
They even say Travis Cole, so yeah.
One last gift from Travis Cole. I got to meet you.
And it turns out Rose and Travis were lovers. So Navarro is talking to Rose about how she can see the dead and what they want.
Some come because they need to tell you something that you need to hear. And some of them just want to take you with them.
We don't know if Rose was Rust's mother or if she was the reason why Rust's mother left Alaska.
Rust was born in Galveston, Texas. Then they went up to Alaska. Then his dad came back from the war or something. And then his mom left shortly after when he was around 2. So I'm just speculating that maybe if Rose isn't Rust's mother, because we know his mother went back to Texas and stayed there, it might be his mother, or it could be Rose was a lover, and maybe that's why Rust's mother had left Alaska in the first place.
Okay. Then back to the conversation with Bryce and Danvers, and Bryce says they were kind of weird, those scientists, right? Like, usually people would work in shifts with this type of thing, but no one would go in, no one would go out. They would all just work and stay there. And the work they were doing was very serious. They could end up curing cancer and other serious diseases.
The work they were doing could end up curing cancer, autoimmune diseases, genetic disorders, just an absolute fucking game changer.
So that's what they were working on. Back to Rose and Navarro. Rose asks if she saw the symbol on one of the victims' foreheads, and then she draws that symbol out in the snow. Navarro asks her about it. She says, I don't know, but I know it's very old.
Older than Ennis.
Okay, intro Captain Connolly, and he wants to send the case to Anchorage because they don't have the resources for this type of case in Ennis. And then Danvers reads a clause about frozen bodies and says they need to thaw in 38 degrees for at least 48 hours or they're worthless for forensics.
And then they end up having to thaw the bodies out in the ice rink, which we find out later in the episode. And it's just like there's no reason really why Danvers is so hell-bent on, I don't have the resources to solve this case, so why would I keep it here kind of deal. And then just using the oh, we need to thaw out the bodies.
And how long do they take to thaw?
48 hours.
Okay, like you can do that, but why can't you then send the bodies to Anchorage after they thaw out? Or even right, even if damaging the bodies is a concern, like we literally see you move the bodies with just a tarp on it on the back of a truck, and there's no one has any issue with it there.
I kind of feel like she thinks that something's up. I think she thinks that someone's trying to cover some shit up.
Yeah.
And that's why she wants it
to stay local.
Like with her eyes on it at all times. Because the second her eyes are not on it, people can pull some shit and no one's ever going to believe that it was different.
Yeah, and then later we find out a lot with Raymond Clark, the one scientist who's missing. We find out later. And then also with Hank Pryor, who is kind of shady. So we'll see what his involvement is later on. So yeah, like you said, Danvers goes to the woman whose family owns the mines, who also owns the ice rink, asks permission to thaw the bodies. She agrees, but just for the town, not because apparently she hates Danvers, which a lot of people seem to hate Danvers in this community. And they bring in the bodies. There's 5 of them that they can see so far, 5 heads, 9 legs, and they all have burnt eyeballs and busted eardrums, and that's something that they're looking into. So then Navarro shows up, shows the tattoo that was on Annie's body, the swirl.
This tattoo was on Annie's body. So? It was on the forehead of one of your guys.
So Navarro thinks that has, a huge meaning. At this point, Danvers still doesn't want to work with Navarro at all because of their past together. So she kind of literally pushes her to get out of here. We don't need you. Take a hike.
She tells her to F off specifically.
Yeah, she does.
But this is this is another thing that doesn't make sense in this episode because we see Danvers and Pryor's son. I can't remember what the son's name is.
Peter.
We see Peter and Danvers look over Annie's case file and they see the swirl in there. Now you see the swirl on another set of bodies and Navarro is like, hey, this is probably connected. And we know that Danvers has seen the swirl in both these cases. So why would you push her off when clearly they're both connected?
This whole her being suspicious of something being covered up. Maybe she was just trying to vet her first. She could be so obsessed with this case because she wants to cover something up. She wants to make sure that it gets pointed in a different direction.
But that doesn't make sense for Navarro just because we know that Navarro's primary
I
thing
didn't say
has
it had
always
to make
been...
sense for Navarro. Danvers just wants an excuse to be a bitch.
That makes more sense.
And at this point, this is when Navarro goes to see Ryan again, Annie Kay's brother, and she asks if he knows the scientist Raymond Clark. Shows him the picture.
No, I don't think I ever saw him.
You sure?
He's like, hey, I don't know this guy. If they were dating, I was never introduced to him, so I don't know him.
I don't know. If she was seeing him, she never introduced him.
And then another individual walks out, and he's one of the miners, and he's like, oh, I don't know him, but he does know him. We find out later. Then a fight breaks out about the miners poisoning the water.
You think my kids don't drink the same water? You mining people are poisoning your own kids! Take it up. We're sick and tired of you pretending you don't see it! We fucking feed your kids!
So that's something that someone commented that. I'll put that comment in. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that has anything to do with this whole case?
Yeah, I think it's probably tied in some way as well. Because we know that the water started going bad in some places the day that those scientists all disappeared. So that's one. During the conversation that Danvers has with the high school teacher, he reveals that they've been doing this for over 10 years, roughly. Like they've been doing this research. The microorganisms that they're trying to find are buried so deep in the permafrost that drilling is a bit of a problem. And if they do drill, it can damage some of the mitochondrial or chromosomal DNA. So my thinking maybe is that somewhere right before these people disappeared, they probably drilled somewhere where they weren't supposed to, and now it's because they did that in order to try to get those microorganisms, now it's leaking into the drinking water for the town, and this is eventually going to lead to that protests and stuff that we see in some of the show previews and trailers. That's going to be the direct link for all of that information.
I think that's a good avenue.
It was mentioned in 2 episodes so far, so it's definitely gonna.
Because Annie K, we know that she was a bit of an activist herself as well,
right?
And it's revealed that, like you said, Dan, like Annie K and Clark were like sleeping together secretly, which even Navarro didn't know. And Navarro's even labeled as the person that would know Annie best, like outside the case files. So I imagine whatever they were doing, and this is probably what led to Annie's death as well, is there were some sort of laws or regulations that they were trying to circumvent together to reach both of their causes. Because we also learned the scientists were just hell bent on whatever they were, like they had no personality or anything. They were just obsessed with their work.
At this point, Danvers and Peter are going through photos and evidence, and they're talking about the symbol on the forehead.
When was it drawn?
Was it before they ran out, or was it after? It was after.
Then someone was out there on the ice with him.
You know, how scared would you have to be to run out on the ice with no shoes? Why were the clothes folded like that? Could it have been the killer? Why would he fold them?
Why are the clothes folded like that?
Could it have been Raymond Clark? Because, you know, he's still missing at this point.
So maybe the killer folded them.
Then we have video evidence, since Peter had the bright idea to use facial recognition to open up one of the phones in an earlier scene. So they see that scene that we saw last week of Clark having this seizure moment and then him saying she's awake. So it's cool that they have that. And I wonder if they'll dig into that even a little bit more. We find out the delivery man from last week, his name is Wallace. So he's talking about Clark to Peter, and he just says, hey, he wasn't right. There's something wrong with him.
You know, I don't think the guy was right.
I even saw him butt-ass naked one time.
And once I saw him hanging out, all natural, skinny ass.
He's just a strange cat. And then Peter asks about the symbol, and he goes, yeah, Clark had that tattooed on his chest.
Hey, have you seen this before?
Yeah, Clark had that thing. He had it tattooed on his chest.
That gives Peter the idea to, oh, I'm going to share this with Danvers, and Danvers looks into it more. I think that was one of the best parts of the episode when we find out that information later.
I mean, we see Danvers looking through some of Clark's research later, right? And there were a bunch of squiggles, like writing all over it. So so Wallace saying that, oh, he was acting weird and everything. So I took like some screenshots of that writing, and like some of the stuff. Like,
I did the same thing.
He's like, oh God, never say her blank, never say blank. I can feel her name. I can hear her moving, her fingers cold, dark, her eyes, and so that's one of them.
Yeah, then like her face, her eyes, right, something like that.
And then another one it says, oh God, never sleep. So I think it's safe to assume that whatever was bugging Raymond Clark, he also was not sleeping. And that was making him seem even weirder. He's not just writing these on the outside. He's writing them right on top of valuable research. So yeah.
And then also something that we didn't mention last week, Wallace says,
I thought I saw somebody when I got to the station yesterday, but it couldn't be, right?
And we do see someone run by, so I'll put that clip in here, and that's probably Raymond Clark, right? Probably him.
I think that makes the most sense. Yeah,
it would make sense.
So that's interesting. So is he the killer, or is he just running for his life? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to find out more about him as we go forward. So then Navarro goes to see the man at the bar who claimed he didn't know Raymond Clark, and she goes to confront him. He's like, hey, you want me to lock you up for not paying your bill? Talk to me. So it turns out Raymond Clark bought a trailer off of this man's cousin, who is now deceased.
You bought my cousin's trailer. A Golden Eagle from the fucking 90s.
Can't you ask your cousin?
Dad.
And he's like, that's all I know. So she's like, all right, give me information on your cousin. Give me information on the trailer. He says exactly what kind of trailer it is, so she knows what she's looking for. So we're moving in the right direction in that case. Now over to Hank. He's texting his fiance, and as he's doing this, she asks for pictures. So he goes looking for pictures to send instead of just taking a selfie of himself. And he realizes that the Annie K files are gone. So he's pissed. And we knew that was going to come. We knew that was going to happen. Okay, big thing here. Last week, they were talking about who funds the Salao station, and it was cut off because of the drunk woman in the cell, and we never got the answer to that. So we got it this week.
If you follow the taxes, you can trace it back to a shell company called NC Global Strategies, which in turn belongs to Tuttle United.
And they have their hand in everything. So Vex, Tuttle United, explain who they are.
So Tuttle United is run by the Tuttle family, which we found was a very influential family in season 1 of True Detective. The Tuttle family and the Tuttle Foundation were basically the reason why all the shit that happened in season 1 happened, and literally no one heard about it, why it kept trying to get swept under the rug and all of that stuff. So if we're making that connection now, like we already know likely what the swirl means. So it's probably connected to the same thing, Carcosa. We also know that the Tuttles are doing something out in Antarctica, because there was also another line that Rose says earlier during her conversation with Navarro. It feels like the world is coming apart at the seams and it's starting in Ennis. And in season 1, it was like the whole point was that you commit all of this occult activity and stuff in order to find like a higher way of living or be a higher being or find some sort of like strength in the afterlife or whatever. Maybe in that sense, whatever the scientists are doing and whatever the Tuttles were doing in Louisiana, it's two twigs on the same branch kind of deal. So it's like, what exactly were these people actually mining for? We know that, oh, it could cure a bunch of diseases, but what's then the tie-in with the swirl? That's all.
Kind of have a theory, but I'll wait till we're done. It's probably way out there, but I'm just trying to make sense of how all of these things fit together because it's just not clicking in my brain. So I'm going with some real outlandish shit in my head right now. So
all right, watch to the end so you see that theory. So then we have a couple scenes. Leah was at Peter's house and Kayla's grandmom was drawing an indigenous tattoo on her chin.
Leah wanted to see what Kakani'd look like on her beautiful face.
Hey, wash it off. No.
It's just marker. It'll come right off.
Go get in the car.
That really pisses Danvers off, and she gets into an argument with him. I don't know why she was so controlling in that moment.
I was going to say, we don't know why she's pissed off about that, right?
Yeah,
No.
I don't know. But, they get home, and Leah immediately sneaks out to go see her girlfriend, and Danvers is putting up Christmas decorations. Then she finds the one-eyed polar bear again. Flashback to the Beatles playing in the background, and I think someone commented earlier that they think the Beatles was playing on the radio when the car accident happened that killed her son. And I think that's, yeah.
I actually have another theory, in all honesty. We heard Twist and Shout playing on a loop for no reason at
the station,
at the science the science station. And they even say, like, it's just, the scene has just been on loop. We don't know why we can't turn it off. This song plays. So I'm thinking, since they're really playing up the supernatural element in this season, maybe it was Danvers' son trying to communicate to Danvers. Because he knows that she's police, and because there's no way that song would just be playing willy-nilly in both of those scenes. Like,
right, sure, yeah. I like that. And then Hank confronts Pete for stealing evidence. He slaps him in the face.
You don't go into my house to steal.
He talks about family, how blood is more important than anything. Don't forget you have family. So I still don't trust Hank at all. We'll see what happens with that. And then the weirdest scene of the episode, Danvers and the Captain bang.
So you fucked me with the bodies, then you come to actually fuck me.
And apparently they've been doing it for 19 years, even when they were both married. It was just a really strange scene. I don't think I needed it.
Do you think she's been faking it all 19 years?
19.
What? No. 19 years ago, I just got married. And
19 years.
Yeah.
I just have a few things about her being cast. Like, she seems too old to be the character that they're trying to get her across to be in this series. She had a young boy who died, it's safe to assume, fairly recently, because it's still so fresh, the memory.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you definitely are not a woman that just had a young child within the last 10 years kind of deal. So that feels kind of off. Her acting throughout, that is the fakest sex scene I've ever seen in anything. The entire thing was very uncomfortable to watch.
I'm just saying,
it wasn't organic.
Take notes, fellas. If that's what it looks like, you're doing something wrong.
Right. You're doing something really wrong if that's what it looks like. But yeah, that entire scene was just really uncomfortable. And I get the whole point was to show that, oh, okay, Captain Collins and her have like a very long relationship, and he's the reason that she got that post out in Ennis and got the job and everything, and that her duty was to, look after the peculiar situations that happen out here. But it doesn't feel natural. I'm not buying your character.
The coolest part, in my opinion, of this whole episode, Danvers gets the credit history for Raymond Clark, and she finds out when and where he got the tattoo. So she's able to talk to the tattoo artist, and she says he was a little weird. He cried after it was finished, and she sends photos of the tats.
And here's one showing the model for the work. Lady.
And we don't see who it is right then and there, but we see it next scene when she goes to Navarro's house, and it was Annie K. And then this is when we find out the tongue also belonged to Annie K. So now Danvers wants to work with Navarro.
You got the same tattoo as her. Here's the DNA results. That was Annie's tongue at Salal.
But just for this, you close your case, I close my case, and then we go our separate ways. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And he got the tattoo like a couple days after she died.
That's 4 days after she died.
So yeah, then we get the scene with Navarro and Kavik, and they're talking about the case, and they realize the trailer was bought so they can fucking private.
That's why he got the trailer, to keep it a secret.
And then they both agree at the same time that where would you hide it? You'd hide it at the Nook.
Where do you keep a trailer at a fucking secret? The Nook.
And she goes there and she finds it. And then she immediately calls Danvers, says, hey, you might want to come check that out. And they go in and they're searching around the trailer and they find Annie K's cell phone. And then they look in a sheet covered section and it's basically like a shrine with the symbol on the roof. And it's really just strange scene. That whole scene was really strange.
Throughout that entire trailer were like little mummified figurines, and even they find like a giant. I don't think it's a real body because parts of it look like it's clearly
it looks like a voodoo doll almost.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a real body in there. So if you guys remember from season 1, another season 1 connection, when Rust and Marty are going through Carcosa in the final episode, there were a bunch of those wrapped up little figurines everywhere, and we even see 1 or 2 big ones trapped in these walls of twigs as well. So another connection that this is the same thing that's happening in Innis as well.
Okay.
Was the biggest thing. Yeah.
And then we get the final scene. Pete calls Danvers as the bodies start to thaw out, and there's only 6 of them.
It's only 6 of them. See?
Clark isn't there. Navarro is sure that he's alive and he's still out there somewhere.
He's not here. Clark's not here. He's alive. He's out there.
And I think that's true too, because especially the flash that we talked about earlier with Wallace seeing someone, thinking he saw someone there. So we'll have to see what happens with Raymond Clark when he's going to show back up. We'll have to see what happens with that scientist who survived somehow and to see if they're going to be able to interview him. I'm okay with the season so far. Vex, I know you're not too sold on it, but hopefully it turns around. We'll enjoy it as we progress. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. So we have launched memberships on this channel. If you want to support us, the $5 membership gets you into our Discord, so you can talk to me, Jules, Vex. We're all in there waiting for you to join. So it'll be a lot of fun, and it's the best way to support us. And we have other big announcements coming soon. We're going to wait to say what those ones are. But yeah, we have memberships now. So if you want to join, just hit that join button right next to the subscribe button, and the $5 one gets you in the Discord. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Later.
Bye, guys.
Tie-ins to season 1, first of all. So Rose says that Travis said goodbye before, like he said goodbye before he went into the ice, right? And brought her homemade croissants before he left and all that stuff. And then Navarro's, and then I found him out on the ice. So there's a couple canon breaks with this entire interaction and reveal. By the time the 2012 events of True Detective season 1 have happened, Travis Cole's been missing for over 30 years. Like nobody has heard of him, right? So even if they find his body, say between 2012 and now 2023, because it's Christmas, right? That would mean that a police officer, Navarro, found the body and then didn't report it. So and also Rose even says, Rose or Navarro, one of them says in the first episode that no one's heard from Travis as well. There was that canon break. And then the second one was that Rose reveals that Rust had been diagnosed with leukemia. So he came back to be with her and, just kind of live his life for those last few days. Now in season 1, if you guys remember, there was a whole episode where Rust goes undercover with this biker gang. He was undercover with this gang, and then he got out of narcotics and all that stuff. And then in order to kind of find some details about their case in season 1, he decides to just willy-nilly go undercover, and he plays this off by taking time off of work. And when he's interviewed in 2012, he's just like, the officers ask him, like, where were you during that time? It's just, I went to go spend time with my father who had died of leukemia. No death record of Travis Cole in that. It's revealed in that season either. And on top of that, we know that Rust did not go to Alaska to be with his father because he was going undercover and he was drugged up and stuff like that to get information in a more unconventional way. And then third of all, in order to have a leukemia diagnosis, I would assume if you're officially going with cancer, wouldn't you have to go to a hospital to get that kind of diagnosis, of which there's also no trace of that, we find out in season 1. There's information that is either intentionally twisted so that Issa Lopez can fit that into her season, or they're just not paying attention, or they just don't really care. But that was kind of odd, that entire interaction, for those reasons.
I would say it's more likely that it's done intentionally.
I think they just really want a Matthew McConaughey cameo.
And that's the other thing too. It's
I
like,
mean,
I feel like
that is very possible.
right, like intentionally putting in these specific details that, again, I just rewatched the season, so I picked out these details, but it feels like you're really pulling to hopefully get a cameo by the end, which kind of leads me to another theory, but we'll get to that later on.
No, I was just gonna give my possibly outlandish theory.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
I don't know. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a frame of reference from the other seasons. I could be way off base here, but like it kind of feels like maybe instead of going in a supernatural direction, they're going more in a mad scientist direction. Feels like they're incorporating a lot of ritual kind of. Honestly, I'm getting vibes of trying to figure out how to bring people back to life.
That's the vibe I'm kind of getting as well.
Right.
Or like
so
some way
like
to
that,
make people live forever.
that's why they would. Right, like that's why they would have Annie K's tongue. Maybe they were figuring out how to manipulate those cells to regenerate them or something. You know what I mean? So, and that would make sense as to why they're, oh my God, she's awake. Maybe it's not necessarily Annie K, but maybe they're doing some kind of experiment on a live subject or not a live subject. And
I don't
like,
think
oh
that's
shit, because like,
yeah. That's
because like that would scare me bad enough for me to fucking book it out into the snow with no shoes on. This dead person just came back to life, and then you have someone in the corpsicle who came back to life. I'm just saying that's where my mind's at right now.
Oh, that actually might explain then why the guy in the corpsicle came back,
That's
or why he
that's
survived.
What I'm saying. Like that's
yeah.
And
yeah.
if they're incorporating the spiral shit, that could be them incorporating some kind of ritual or like the folded clothes, whatever it is. Maybe they're just trying to find the right balance of science and witchcraft, basically.
To go on your theory a little bit more. So we know that they found a body for Annie K 6 years prior, right?
Doesn't
but
mean
we don't know. Her. Yeah, we don't know. And also, we don't know what they did with that body. So what if,
that too.
Okay,
but like maybe that's why Danvers didn't want to let go of those bodies. Right? Maybe she's
would
like,
they have kind of dropped that information to us, because it isn't even, because Danvers doesn't even really believe the cases are tied until there's definitive proof that it's Annie's tongue. We find out at the end of the episode, right?
Not that she lets on to anybody. Doesn't mean she doesn't.
I don't think Issa Lopez is that smart in her writing to do that. Like just what she's doing so far. I don't think the creator of this series.
So what you're saying is I should write the next season.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. On your tangent though, so maybe somehow they've acquired Annie's body, and Annie has, you know how there's that ant zombie fungus in Brazil in the rainforest? Same kind of idea. When he says like she's awake, she kind of comes back after them, and these scientists have all maybe in some way wronged her, and because they're all tied to the
she's attacking them.
Right. And because they're all tied to the Tuttle Foundation and they've been out there for so long, and I can almost guarantee that they're going to somehow tie in as well the fact that there is a very high number of missing Indigenous people that are like generally those cases are unsolved. So I'm sure they'll make that connection as well.
And given that they're, a group of people that are often overlooked when it comes to this kind of thing, it would make sense that you want to perform experiments on someone that they're not going to be looking for.
Yeah. There
Love
you
it.
go. Yeah.
All right.
And like maybe that blur that we saw when the security guy was there or whatever, whoever that guy was.
Maybe it was Annie.
Maybe it was Annie.
Ooh.
And not one of the scientists or whoever that experiment that came back to life was.
Maybe the Clark guy, maybe he's just deep in those mines because they keep talking about those mines.
Yeah, maybe he took refuge in there. Who knows?
You never know.
Come on, Liz. They're just blowing off steam.
Shut up, Hank.
I still need my toothbrush.